Good morning, beautiful people. We are live. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton. And guess it is exactly 9 a.m. GMT. And I am delighted to be here with you again. Thank you for being here with me. I see all these wonderful people already in our chat. Krona's already got her coffee ready. I love to hear that. And good morning, of course, to our wonderful mods, Soul Sound and Crazy Bunny. I do not have a Cartier watch, me. Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? No, not at all. Good morning to you all. Beats and Tapes and Marsh Girl and Peter and Shug and Kendall Gary and Gary Kendall Gary, actually, and Maria and Shalini and Brit Indian and Marlena and Pistol and Julie. Did I already say Julie? And Health Freedom UK. I met him on Friday. He's lovely. Robert is lovely. Good morning to you, Robert. Robert gave me this. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute. It's a full house. It is a full house. And thank you all for being here. I truly, truly appreciate it. Now, let me just pop in these because I need to make sure I've got them on so I haven't got an echo coming back at me. How are you? How was your weekend, everybody? Was it fine and dandy? Mine was. I'm going to tell you all about it in a minute. Hello, Hugo. Hello, Maggie Mac and Fox. Good morning to you. And Lydia and Katie and Tara and Robert and lovely Teresa. Yes, thank you, Teresa. Thank you so much. You know what time it is, peeps. Let's do this. Let's do this.
You can't handle the truth.
Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
Good morning, then rises. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton. Sonia Poulton.
I have to tell you, Marcuson, you have NLP'd everybody wherever I was going. The people I talked to on Friday and Saturday, I'm going to tell you about that shortly. We've NLP'd them with this, and that was never the aim. The aim was this, actually, that tune actually came about as a consequence of me saying I had very deep concerns about AI and how it would take away work from truly creative people. And Marcuson wanted to show me that we can mix them both together, that he can have his input. As you can see, there was human input there and also AI. Amazing stuff. I love it. Good morning, Gord from Norfolk. How are you? We have blue skies, but now we have crazy formed clouds after the planes have been out. Grand risings all, says Mel's. Good morning to you all. Good morning, Flickin. Good morning. Good morning, TH and Man of the Hour. Good morning. And Eva's apprentice and Katie and Armand and Wade. How are you, Wade? Be back in comments later, hopefully. Let's hope so, unless you spot something rather odd in your back garden, eh, Wade? Wade, I presume you are in Australia. I hope you're all right, everybody. Lovely, lovely to see you today. So I completed my mission. Actually, first of all, let me just tell you what's going to be on the show today. Going to be joined from Manila by journalist Warren Thornton, who will be taking us through the latest geopolitical events regarding the US elections and more, and what it means in the wider world. And also, old favourite, psychotherapist John Hendon will be joining us today. He'll be discussing the Lampard inquiry, which is about the mental health deaths that have taken place in Essex. And also, our news stories include Archbishop Justin Welby. He knew that a prolific pedo was in the Church of England, and he did absolutely nothing about it. Welby must resign. More about that later. And Diddy, more allegations. I know you're shocked. And there's been a royal PR drive because they've had something of a disastrous week, haven't they? With everybody realizing that they're not what they were, not what they claim to be, rather. And so they've had this PR drive, and I'll be telling you more about that later. And then what about the Remembrance ceremony in London yesterday? Very mixed feelings, very bittersweet. A lot of people obviously are very emotionally attached to that, but it's absolutely awful to see the core warmongers leading celebrations. More about that later. And journalist and filmmaker Richard D. Hall was back in the High Court on Friday and has been penalised with costs and damages to his opponents. And I'll be asking, what message does this send out for journalists like myself who question official narratives? And then there was that NatWest outage. yesterday, which tells us that we should never, ever, ever have a full digital banking system, or we are truly in trouble. And we'll be looking at geoengineering. Of course we will. And you know why? Because hardly anybody else does. And then we'll be talking about the farmers' protest in London this month. And we'll end the show looking at limiting beliefs that hold us back. And I will say, don't box me in. And that includes yourself. All this plus the usual good stuff, your emails, your geoengineering images, and the liveliest of live chats. We do news differently around here, and you know why? Because someone had to. Thank you, all of you, for being here today. I truly appreciate it. And of course, it is the 11th day, and quite soon it will be the 11th hour. And that is to mark the end of the First World War. It was at 5 a.m. on this day in 1918 that the Allied powers and Germany signed an armistice document on the railway carriage, actually. And that was when World War I came to an end. And we still honour that. Certainly in the UK. Some of it I'm concerned about. I feel like it's a glorification of war rather than a stern message from history. And as I've already stated, I absolutely loathe the fact that these warmongers get together around the cenotaph. They make me sick. They make me sick. And I think hope and love and peace, who's often in our chat, she might even already be here. I nicked your tweet, Hope, because I think you sign it up. I think you sum it up best what it actually means to us. And that is, Hope said, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th year. We must never forget those who lost their lives fighting for our freedom. Thank you to my great grandfather and my 3 great uncles who lost theirs. And that really, I think, is more about what it's about. So I'd just like to say hello to everybody, of course. I'm pleased to tell you that my mission on Friday is complete. I've been out to connect with our tribe. Yes, I have. I've come back to report that people are in very good shape, by the way, following the Trump win in the US. You don't have to be on the side of Trump at all to feel the positive energy that has been unleashed, right? And it's honestly, that energy is not just because it's not at all in my experience. It's not about embracing the man, but of the message this has sent to the wider world, and particularly for us beleaguered Brits, and certainly after we've been hit by a whirlwind of totalitarian madness with Sakir Rodney Starmer this summer. So I would just like to say thank you so much to my dear and lovely friend Sumar. Many of you will know her. She arranged a curry night for me to meet a lot of lovely like-minded people on Friday, and then breakfast on Saturday. Both were absolutely fabulous. And both brought something different of worth, and both left me feeling how absolutely blessed I am to do what I do, get out there and meet like-minded people who want to be part of change. We are change makers, and love him or loathe him, Donald Trump has acted like a lightning rod to that last week. Yes. So as a consequence of that meeting, interestingly, the breakfast meeting, which by its very nature gets down to business, I'm going to be doing some merchandise. Yes, I am. I've often steered away from doing merchandise because it felt insensitive and exploitative given the subject matter that I cover, really. But this breakfast show is different. This is my thing. This is me, and I have every right to make merch for it. Yes, I do. And I want you to help me do it, please. I'm looking for slogans. Something to whack on the side of a mug. Yes. Thoughts, please? I really would appreciate your thoughts. Yes, I would. What's this, Carly? 3 years ago today, the no jab, no job mandate was enforced, resulting in myself and 40k care workers being unlawfully dismissed. Oh, my days. Disgusting stuff. Disgusting stuff, excuse me. And I see lovely Robert there. It was a great night to mix with lovely like-minded people. Robert, it was. Robert from Health Freedom UK. Everybody, I'm going to put a link to Robert's channel in the description at the end of the stream. And please sign up because I can confirm that he's absolutely lovely. He really is. And Robert has produced this. And it's organic and it contains CBD, coconut, olive, hemp, seed oil, essential oils, including lavender and more. It's a salve, and I'm looking forward to using it. Haven't yet used it, Robert, but having met you, and you strike me as a man of not only someone who's interesting, but of some integrity. And I'm looking forward to using this. Thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate it. Yes, I do. A mug with question the narrative to plant seeds. I like that. Question the narrative. You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Robert. Absolutely welcome. I like that. Question the narrative. I can dig that. Ooh, any other ideas, people? Let me know. I'd be proud to wear or drink out of it. Wake up, says Robert. Thank you. Good morning, Stephen. Good morning. It was absolutely lovely on Friday and Saturday. So many good, wonderful people. There was Matt, who was at the Richard D. Hall hearing and informed much of what I'll be able to tell you in a bit later. Marsh Girl would love a mug with Good Morning Grand Risings on. I did think about it being Good Morning Grand Risings, just because we're NLP and everybody with that. Right. And also, thank you so much. What have I done with these books? Yeah. Thank you so much, lovely Linda, who's been and given me some books. You know, I love books, especially when I'm not reading them. But these are easy enough and straightforward enough for me. Look at that. I'm sure they're absolutely brilliant. And Linda has suggested that both these wonderful people would make great guests on Wake Up. I'm open to it, peeps. I'm open to it. And can I just say, if any of you ever find yourself in Royston, Hertfordshire, and you're in need of a decent massage, I have to recommend Ling. Ling is absolutely amazing. Chinese health practitioner. She gave me the most fantastic massage. And what was incredible about Ling, she's one of those people who has magic fingers, right? Not only can she alleviate pain, but she can tell you where the pain is. She was literally going to me, right, this is one of your pain points. And I go, yes. And this is before she even touched it. It's amazing. Amazing. Highly recommended. Her name is Ling. And if you need a contact for her, get in touch with me. Steve wants a mug that says, I wake up with Sonia in my dreams. Kind of like that, Steve. Kind of like that. The Risen Saviour is the Sunday on 25th of December. What's going on? What's going on there? Think for yourself. Or I like to think for myself. Holly, I like that too. Grand Risings, London lady. She's on her phone. Can't really see the chat, but Grand Risings to everybody. And yes, so as I say, met so many lovely people. And can I just say, I think this is really important that we do this, right? See, what I've come to understand, that the more I get out there, the more I get to talk to our tribe, and that it is plentiful and many, but the more I get to do it, the more I realize how many there are of us. There are more of us than them. Okay. And what we need to do is we need to link up, and we need to also support each other. And I would like you all, if you find yourself in Saffron Walden, I would like you to go and check out Kim's Tea and Coffee House. Please, people, if you have an independent business and you have stood up and you are awake and you've stood up against draconian measures, whether that was lockdown or mandatory jabs or whatever, get in touch with me and I will plug your business. Kim's is one of them. Kim stood up and they've had trouble from the locals who have difficulty with a coffee shop run by people who are awake and who oppose lockdown and mandatory jabs. But please, Saffron Walden, Essex, if you're there, check them out, because honestly, we need to look after each other. We are stronger together, Chris. Yes, Robert, I was in Royston. You're in Hemel, are you? Hemel Hempstead, is that? Yes, control your mind or someone else will be. I love that. And Craig has that honesty. I love that. The truth is rarely pure and never simple, says Gary. I love all of this. I support local shops and coffees and cafes, says Katie. Yeah, we need to do that, right? We absolutely need to do that. What's a bit cheesy? How about awake and informed on a mug? I'm loving all of these. Yes, Pistol, let's do it. Let's support each other. So you tell me, if you've got an independent business and you're prepared to stand up and be counted, I will plug you here, right? Yes, Christine avoids big coffee chains. She loves the small ones. Me too. Me too. And let me just say, thank you all of you, all the wonderful people I met, all of you. And it was a fantastic event, both of them, actually. And I just really, really enjoy it. And I will be speaking at another event later this month, more about that. And I'm also be returning to Edinburgh for Christmas, which is really great. Really great. Really looking forward to that. And I want to ask you, darling people, where do you watch Wake Up? Because this is where Crazy Bunny's cat watches Wake Up. There's Onyx. Onyx, Getting ready for wake up. Hello, Onyx. I got to see you again. You are so cute. Look at that baba. Oh, it's so scrumptious. So scrumptious. Please send me your images, your videos of where you watch Wake Up, and I will play them. I will show them. Hello, Lydia, YouTube. I don't know what that means. Yes, on a plane. Oh, we love it. Yes, Curly Crew. We'll be talking about the farmers at Westminster later. I promise. I promise. And Remembrance Sunday, just to go back to that again, it's too painful for many of us to watch because I absolutely loathe the fact that those warmongers are getting to gaslight us over and over and over again. It really is obscene. Let me show you the images from yesterday. And so what you have, of course, is you have, there he is, Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, the new leader of the Conservative Party. And then you have William, Charles and Anne from the Royal Ho family. And then you have a pile of former PMs. Not one of those people have fought for our freedom. They've all been part of measures to lock us down, to take away our freedoms, including mandating jabs. Lydia, do you want to send a message? You can send that to my email address, soniapoulton@sky.com. Yes, you can. So just to see all these people, I just think it's obscene. I think it should only be purely families and loved ones and people who have had to live with the consequences of their loved ones, and veterans, of course, of their loved ones being lost in war. And I think Reverend Benjamin Pryor on X summed it up best, because he used one of my tweets. Because I said, we do not honour our dead by allowing warmongering politicians and royals to lead tributes to them. We spit all over their graves by doing so. And that is how I feel. And I think it's absolutely abhorrent that we have those people there. Shalini, it triggered you too, did it? It did. Anyway, the Reverend said, as a British Armed Forces veteran, I absolutely agree. If only all those who were slaughtered in the disgusting bankers' wars could see how their nations had fallen in the last century. And some people also, they won't now wear poppies for all manner of different reasons, not least because it's incredibly political. I noticed that one tweeter said, Fleur Elizabeth said, I'm not wearing a poppy this year because the Royal British Legion's head of diversity and inclusion earns roughly £65,000 a year, while many ex-servicemen struggle for support. I'll still honour and remember the brave souls who served and sacrificed for our freedom. And that is the reality, right? Is that there are an awful lot of veterans who are homeless. And also, let us not forget all the animals that were murdered and continue to be murdered in war. They don't choose to be. They don't choose to be there at all, right? Unlike the humans, they don't choose to be there. And many animals were murdered, whether that was dogs, whether that was mules and donkeys, whether that was horses, really awful stuff. And obviously, of course, we also saw a return of Kate, who we're now being told didn't actually have cancer. Apparently she had precancerous cells, right? Many people have had the same thing. Yeah, they have. But they didn't take months off of work, did they? I mean, who has the luxury of that? But of course, many people believe that, with many other things going on behind the scenes, nothing to do with Kate necessarily having cancer. And so there she was, laughing along and thoroughly enjoying herself, it would appear, on the balcony. But I just want to say that just because of my disdain for what takes place around the cenotaph, that isn't my disdain for all of the people and all of the families who are deeply impacted by lives lost in war. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And it should stop. Yes, it should. Lindsay, did you get the afternoon off work for the same thing? I hear you loud and clear, sister. Animals, yes, absolutely horrifying. They were taken to war from the beautiful countryside of the UK, said Katie. What's that? What's this? I'm missing some. Death cultists perpetuating wars, glorify and blame on others when it is them. Ian, I have to agree with you. There is a glorification that I'm uncomfortable with. Really, there is. Yes. What's that? Patricia, listen, look at this. Everybody look at this comment. Veterans becoming homo sapiens. Disgusting. Absolutely. Hear you loud and clear. Yes, Hamish. Yes. got you. I think it's outrageous that these scammers and satanic warmongering scum get anywhere near it. No, Poppy. Many ex-services know the truth about it, or they do. Robert, yes, animals are better than many of us. Yes, they are indeed. So I was really uncomfortable with that, really. All of them gathered around as, like they're the ones who are chosen to pay tribute to the people, yet they're the ones who keep sending innocent people off to die in rich man's wars. Yes, indeed. No, Jeanette, there is a real problem with the Royal British Legion, and homeless veterans, I think, is the highest demographic actually living on the streets. Who's helping them? Who's helping them? Let's not be mad. Let's get even. Right, I tell you, actually, no, this is hopeless because I'm going to get a bit mad now. Justin Welby. Do we all know Justin Welby? Let's bring him to the stage, as it says here. Move over a little bit so I don't clash with these images. This, everybody, is Justin Welby on one side, and on the other is an egregious and prolific abuser known as John Smith. Justin Welby is the Archbishop of Canterbury and has said that he considered resigning over an independent report published last Thursday, which detailed how a leading Anglican had physically and sexually abused at least 115 children and young men, and that went unchallenged for decades. And the Church of England has identified the abuse by John Smith, a barrister who ran Christian youth camps, but it was covered up in the 1980s. And the report confirmed that Justin Welby had known Smith in the 1970s, and Welby was overheard by a contributor to the review having a grave discussion about Smith with Reverend Mark Rushton in 1978, 4 years before Rushton wrote a report detailing Smith's abuse. And Welby admits being warned to stay away from Smith in 1981, but he continued to send him Christmas cards and made donations to his mission in Zimbabwe, where Smith went to live after abruptly leaving Britain in 1984. And also in Zimbabwe, under mysterious circumstances, a 16-year-old boy died at a holiday camp run by Smith. Now, Welby was not ordained until that same year, cannot be held responsible for the failures of the church in the 1970s and the 1980s. But the report found that from July 2013, the Church of England knew at the highest level about the abuse in the late 1970s and early 1980s. It said Smith should have been reported to the police in the UK and to relevant authorities in South Africa, where he then lived, and that the failure to do so endangered children around him. You think? Welby was elected Archbishop of Canterbury in February 2013, and the report finds that he was aware of the allegations against Smith by August of that year, at least. But we certainly know that from the 1970s, he knew there was a problem. And the reports, the conclusions are absolutely damning. About 4 years ago, Welby made a commitment to meet abuse victims, Welby had made a commitment to meet abuse victims, but it took him 4 years to do so. He eventually made a personal apology. It came too late for people. Too little, too late. You could have stopped that man. You could have stopped him. And I'm absolutely sick and tired of hearing that Justin Welby considered resigning. Considered resigning? That's parasitical, elitist privilege right there. He should be unceremoniously kicked out and then investigated by the police with possible charges and convictions to follow. I'm tired of letting people get away with it. This is 2024. The rules need to change, and I don't give a flying fig if you are a senior clergy in the Church of England. And the other thing, of course, about Justin Welby, we should have known he was a wrong-un people. We should have known is he was a major jab pusher. Okay, even being pictured having his jab, which he described as an answer to a prayer, right? I'm just so sick of him. He said, that coronavirus does exist, the vaccine is safe, and everybody should have it. And I even remember him making some kind of quote about, that Jesus would have, something like that. This is somebody who I think lacks integrity and lacks morality, and he certainly should not be in his position. And there is a link already actually in the description, which I've already put there, should be there. And that is, I generally think petitions aren't really worth much, but every now and again, I think that we should get behind them. And this is one of them. He needs to be gone. He needs to be gone, and he needs to be held to account. How many children could have been saved if he had spoken up when he was aware? It makes me absolutely sick. I'm so angry about this sort of thing. The level of the abuse was just shocking. That's the Making report, if anybody is not familiar with it. And it is about the abuse committed by John Smith. It's highlighted very serious failings in the culture, in the structures, and in the leadership of the Church of England. This was a cover-up. This was a cover-up. And the Reverend Robert Thompson, Vicar of St. Mary's, Kilburn, has launched that petition. Let's get behind it, people. Let's get behind it. We need to. And actually, do you know what? I'm going to bring in my first guest before I talk about Richard D. Hall. We'll talk about Richard D. Hall after my first guest. Let me just pick up some of your comments before we go to our first guest. Oh my goodness, there's so many. What's this? Religion is for the lost and lonely. Just pray direct to the big man. No church is necessary. I hear you. Yes, Steve. 8 million children every year go missing in the world. Right. You're right. Exactly. He's evil, says Shalini. He's evil. Yes. All in with promoting everything that goes against God. I hear you loud and clear. Justin Welby came from the world of banking, says Linda. He did indeed. That should have told us everything we needed to know, shouldn't it, people? Right. I'm going to welcome in our first guest very, very shortly. Just to say, it's nearly a week, obviously, since Trump's third election win. See what I did there? And both Trump and Kennedy are making all the right noises, but does it amount to a hill of beans? Trump has declared that neither Nikki Haley or Mike Pompeo are part of his team, which is welcomed by most people who feel like retching when they hear those two names because they're such horrible arch globalists. And I'm delighted to see that Robert F. Kennedy is, as I say, making all the right noises regarding exposing junk food. May it continue. May it long continue. And whispers say that the UK government are putting up the Dark Lord himself, Peter Mandelson, as an intermediate between Trump and the UK. I suppose the good thing is at least they have a shared history, having both spent plenty of time with Jeffrey Epstein. Right, let's bring in our first guest because he's a good one. He's a real good one. Let me get rid of this first and let me welcome him to the stage if I can. There he is. Wonderful Warren Thornton, everybody. Good morning, Warren.
Good morning, Sonia. How are you?
Well, lovely to see you. Absolutely lovely to see you, everybody. This is journalist and presenter Warren Thornton of warrenthornton.com, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and Sunday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. I'm assuming that's GMT, Warren. You also do chats in conversation with. You are, as I say, you're a journalist. You're a breaker of stories and a breaker of damn good stories as well. Let me just give people, some of our viewers won't be familiar with you, but you are a journalist with integrity, one of those rare creatures. So let's give a little bit of background of who you are. 6 years as a military sniper. Warren, where? Tell us about it.
Well, I actually joined the Royal Corps of Transport. I wanted to be nothing more than a truck driver. And my second week into driving, I was called into the commandant's office. I thought, my God, what have I done? Because there's hundreds of people there. Why am I being summoned in? And they basically had seen my scores on the range, and they said, anybody who can shoot like you can is not driving a truck for a living. So they packed me off and taught me to be a sniper.
So were you an actual sniper? Were you actually like shooting? Oh,
yes.
Where?
I was in the Falklands in 1982, and of course various other, shall we say, places that we're not allowed to, for simple reasons, not allowed to talk about. But I saw action in the war in the Falklands in 1982. I came out in 1984 and then became literally protection, or should we say health and safety, as it would be called now, for people who were in war-torn countries. So I would go to these war-torn countries and look after aid workers to make sure they didn't get hurt in any way.
And that is the thing, is you kind of turned it all around on its head, and you became somebody who was highlighting very serious injustices in these war-torn countries and speaking
Yeah.
out about it, right? Protecting aid workers. And that
Yeah.
must have taken something. But you also, very famously, you broke the Nazi in the Canadian Parliament story. Tell people about that.
Yes, well, obviously, when Hunker was decided they would bring him into the Canadian Parliament, and they would give him a standing ovation, and they said that he fought against the against the Russians in the Second World War. Well, we know what sort of Ukrainians fought against the Russians in the Second World War, so I did a bit of digging, found out that he was actually a prisoner of war in the UK. And of course, did some digging from there, found out that he was a dyed-in-the-wool Nazi. And the Speaker of the House had actually received money from his son for his campaign, who was basically the chief financial officer of a massive mining company in Canada, and lived in his actual constituency, and donated a large chunk of money to the Speaker of the House, Roto, who in the end had to end up resigning. Of course, he took the fall for Trudeau, Freeland, and everybody else.
I mean, the thing is that you and I know that once you start to dig deep on various parliaments and how it all works and the geopolitical landscape, oftentimes it looks absolutely nothing like it's portrayed in mainstream media, right?
No, that's absolutely correct. If ever anybody wants to know anything about how these things are started or anything else, go and have a look. See who owns the people who are telling you this, and see who donates to them. Always follow the money. It takes you to the truth very, very quickly.
It really does. And so, one of the things that I want you to address really is, in terms of your work and your research, the sort of potential impact that a Donald Trump presidency may have on that situation. So, let us have a look at that, for example, because I was looking at, again, going back to what mainstream media says. So, according to mainstream media, Donald Trump had issued a stern warning to Putin on Thursday. What do you make of a headline like that, as if Donald Trump is issuing a stern warning to Putin?
It's complete and utter nonsense. What the mainstream media are picking up on is an ex-NATO commander who actually made this statement to a journalist, and of course everybody else has run with it. Putin and Zelensky and Trump have had dialogue. Nobody will know the full extent of that dialogue until Trump takes office. The deal will have been done by then. But the nonsense that was put forward in this, shall we say, fait accompli, that Trump has told Putin not to escalate, that's complete nonsense. He hasn't. And we've had that from the horse's mouth, from people right close to Trump. Very, very simply, Zelensky's money will be cut off on that date, or very shortly after it. So Zelensky has to come to the negotiating table. Now, this thing where they're saying that Crimea has actually gone, yes, it has, but Putin will want the 8 oblasts in the east, which are all Russian speaking. He's not interested in anything else, and he would also like Odessa, but that will have to be negotiated away. Of course, these people who shill for BlackRock, because let's face it, Russia is sitting on $7 trillion worth of BlackRock minerals that they can't get their hands on, so they're not very happy about that. But what they were looking for is this frozen war, where they would freeze it for 15, 20 years, where Ukraine wouldn't go into NATO. That's just to buy time for Putin to be gone, and then they can have another crack at it. Now, let me assure you from our Russian sources that we speak to, they want 3 things. They want the denazification of Ukraine. That means Zelensky and all his minions gone. There is no scenario whatsoever where Ukraine are allowed to join NATO in any way, shape, or form. Anything saying, oh, you know, at a time in the future, completely and utterly off the table. And of course, Ukraine don't have a winning position, so they don't have any cards to play with. And very, very simply, this is the Warhawks putting this forward, hoping they can have another go at it at a later date. That's simply not going to happen.
And that's so completely different to what we've heard in legacy media. You know, we've heard that Trump was on a call, which also involved Elon Musk, to Zelensky, and they assured him of continued backing. That doesn't sound quite what you're saying there.
No, they didn't make any assurances or any promises to Zelensky whatsoever. Absolutely none, and that's straight from the horse's mouth. And in fact, I spoke to somebody who's very close to Donald Trump Jr., and they are absolutely certain that in so many days that little pipeline of pocket money is going to be cut off. That's why Biden and Sullivan are rushing through this package of 60 odd billion to try and get that through to Zelensky before Trump takes office.
That would send a huge message to the rest of the world if they cut off that financial pipeline, right? Because this has been America's proxy war all along, right?
Yes, it has been. And the trouble is that Trump now wants to back away from that. He wants to get away from that. They have enough trouble with the Middle East. And of course, they have China coming up. And the problem that they have is that NATO are now panicking because they'll be left holding the ball. Let's be honest, the USA actually funds 70% of it. Now, Mark Rutte, or as I call him, Rooty Fruity, because he's a complete Fruit Loop, has actually warned Trump that he will kick Trump out of NATO. What he's actually terrified of is that Trump walks away from NATO because NATO get left holding the bill. And that would not just Germany's economy is already in the toilet. Ours is going downhill fast. It would ruin every single country that's in NATO.
Warren, as a sort of seasoned reporter and somebody who's seen what's been going on behind the scenes, how do you respond when people say this is all theatre? They're all in it together.
I don't think that's quite true, for the simple fact that it is one of those where you follow the money, you look at what's going on. French military intelligence were crawling around in Ukraine since 2020. You've got the Georgia revolution that has started because the NGOs, would you believe, not because of the jabs, not because of freedom of speech or anything else, but literally the riots in Georgia are because NGOs are going to have to declare where they get their overseas money from. That's why they would have you believe that they're rioting in the streets. And you have to ask, who pays for all those EU flags who suddenly prop up when the protests start? And of course, this is exactly like the Maidan Square. How long is it before weapons are gathered from the American embassy and snipers start killing people, and suddenly this becomes another Ukraine special?
Warren, I'd like you to answer some of these. There's so many questions and so many comments coming in. Help me to answer some of them. Let's start with Emma's, right? Emma says, I thought they passed a bill that they continue to fund Ukraine for 10 years and Trump can be impeached if he tries to cut it off. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I do, Emma. It's very, very simple. He signs an executive order and that money is stopped. It doesn't matter what the Congress vote. He has presidential veto and he can stop that.
And this is also interesting. Stella said Trump will divert the funding to an all-out war with Iran. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because when you have Christopher Wray, for instance, should be fired immediately. He has come out with this ridiculous plot that an Iranian and, 3 people were going to assassinate Trump. 2 of them turned out to be Jewish New Yorkers. One of them fled back to Iran. And of course, the FBI phoned him up in Tehran and he admitted to absolutely everything. And of course, he didn't die in Tehran. The Iranians didn't go and grab him and kill him because obviously he'd spilled the beans. This is a complete nonsense. A country that has tried to stop the escalation for the last 2 years is going to send over some guy to get together with a couple of New Yorkers and try and assassinate Trump. Christopher Wray, of course, has produced absolutely no evidence for this whatsoever. And the Iranians have never heard of this guy. They've never seen him leave. He doesn't have a passport going out of the country. He doesn't have one coming into the country. And of course, as I say, Christopher Wray, that's a man just desperate to hold on to his job because let's face it, what the FBI did to Trump while he was getting ready to run and over the 4 years he was not in office was quite disgraceful. And of course, now Christopher Wray comes out with this. But again, it's the war hawks. The military industrial complex has to have a boogeyman.
Yes,
and it will
always.
be Iran. Yes,
Always.
It will be
And
you can't sell weapons.
And Greg says, don't forget the conflict over Taiwan is also waiting in the wings to be initiated. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, he's absolutely correct. Very, very simply, what they've been doing is they've been carrying out drills with Italy and Australia off the Philippines. And of course, we're based in Manila. And we were talking to the Chinese embassy only the other day, and the Philippines are being pushed into having a row with China. And of course, Duterte, who was the Philippine president, was very pro-Chinese. And of course, we have Marcos now, who is very much pro-USA. So the Philippines are being used basically, and of course Taiwan will be as well. They'll be used as a proxy like Ukraine were for the war with Russia.
They're coming in thick and fast. Kat wants to know what you think about the Trump assassination attempt. Is that the first, second or third one, Kat? Any thoughts on that, Warren?
Yeah, very, very simply, the guy who was killed on the roof from 150 yards away. If you're a sniper, you are not thinking about the shot whatsoever because you're trained to do it. So you practice over and over and over to do this thing. From that distance, a trained sniper would not miss it in a million years. The shot was taken by somebody else. And the reason for this, very, very simply, if you're a sniper, you only think about two things. Two things you think about. You think about getting away and you think about shooting from cover. This guy is crawling on a roof and he is 150 yards away. There is no chance of him ever getting away. A sniper, any sniper worth his salt, would not take that shot. Now, if you take it back another 300-400 yards, there's plenty of buildings and there's plenty of trees where a decent sniper could have taken a shot from. And let's face it, if Trump hadn't moved his head, he would have missed. Now, as a trained sniper, what you do is you allow for the wind, Sonia. So what you do is you look at a flagpole. So it's always a bad idea to have flags around people when they're speaking on the podium. And you literally, you look at the state of the flag. You take that as a degree. And then you divide it by 4. So if the flag is at 60 degrees, you divide it by 4. That gives you 15 miles per hour wind. So you allow for that, and then you take the shot.
That's an interesting insight right there, because I have to say our viewers are not at all convinced by what we've been fed. And I think it's so important that we're able to get behind the headlines. I do. And but I'm literally being hit with so many questions. I hope you don't mind, because I think that your knowledge and experience is so vast. It's really very helpful for us to be able to understand a lot of what is going on. Martin says this: our government has pledged 3 billion of our money per year to Ukraine for as long as it takes. How do you think if Trump pulled the plug, that would then impact, for example, the UK funding?
Oh, the UK funding is already in a mess because they say they have a 22 billion black hole. But let's not forget that the 22 billion black hole they've talked about is to do with the net zero. They've pledged 22 billion to that. And of course, you're talking about 3 billion going to Ukraine, while old people who are only going to use 1.1 billion of that, and the other 1.9 billion could have been used for other causes. We are giving 3 billion to Ukraine, and let's face it, when he took office, he didn't turn around and say the British people were his very first thought. His very first thought were the people of Ukraine and how we must continue to support them. Starmer is a bought and paid for weft puppet. When he was famously asked, would you like to be prime minister or work at the World Economic Forum? He actually turned around and said, well, I can do business in Davos. So that tells you everything you need to know. He will do exactly what he's told by his partner.
And just to go back to the Trump shooting, Chill in the UK said, are people stupid or something? Someone died. How can people think this is set up? And that's not about you, Warren. That's about the comments that are going on in the chat, because lots of people absolutely think that it was just a bunch of lies. Do you think somebody died there?
Where? Sorry?
At the first Trump shooting.
Oh, the first Trump shooting, yes. I mean, the guy who was on the roof got killed. But of course, as a sniper, what you have to remember, if you go back and you look at the footage, and I'm telling you this as a trained sniper, the very first shot took them by complete surprise because they were already looking at the roof where the gentleman was. And the first shot took them by complete surprise because they couldn't zero in where that's come from. Now, there are many things give that away. And of course, when they shoot him, when you look through a magnifying scope, that guy 150 yards away, you can see his teeth before you put the bullet through his head.
Got you. Right. Listen, now the questions are really coming in thick and fast. What about this? Can you ask what he thinks of QAnon, etc., please, Sonia? What do you think about that?
I'm sort of on the fence with it, Sonia, because I'm sort of like a hard-bitten journalist. Now, some of the things they get right, some of the things they get badly wrong, but there's also a blue QAnon as well. And of course, it is one of those where you sort of look at it and go, I need proof. And as a journalist, as a hard-bitten journalist like I am, rather than conspiracy theory, I need to have proof. So I'm on the fence is the answer to that one, Crazy Bunny.
And I think also it's important for us to acknowledge that false flags do exist. They are a very real thing and they are frequently used against
Yes.
us, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you're quite right there. Charles is quite right there. Israel is a concern and it is a worry. Very, very simply, we know that Trump is backed by that. But then again, most of the British government, you've got to look at 40% of the cabinet receive that money. And do you know how many senators received money from Israel in the US Senate last year?
Tell us.
61 of them received money. Lindsey Graham received over $1 million. There are 61 senators that get money from them for their campaign funds. And of course, the military industrial complex funds 94 of those senators.
Dear Lord, you're blowing my mind this morning, Warren. I kind of hoped this would happen. I do like it when it does that. And Ant said, I have a little personal inside knowledge that makes QAnon far more credible. We'd like to hear that. Chill said, I doesn't think it's a false flag. I think the deep state tried to take out Trump and failed. What do you think about the deep state?
Oh, there's no question whatsoever. I mean, there's no way that guy was acting alone, suddenly carried a ladder. Now, the first reports say that he carried it so far. There had to be help given to him, simple as that. So you're trying to get me to believe that this guy just went and bought a high-powered rifle, or I'm sorry, I should say an automatic weapon. He decided to carry a ladder 1.5 miles. He then managed to put it on the very roof that was totally unguarded. The health and safety turned around and said that they couldn't put men on that roof because it was a sloping problem and therefore they couldn't go on there. Yet all the other snipers were on roofs that were far more sloping. So that's complete nonsense. Had to be an inside job and people had to know this was going. And if you were asking me, Secret Service, Christopher Wray, without a shadow of a doubt, there is no way that anybody gets on a roof 150 yards away from a presidential candidate.
Interesting. Money has always had the loudest voice. Now, the reason that I've brought this up is because often, a lot of times, people talk about war as being part of a depopulation program. Many people say it. No, it all comes back to money. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, it may, but that may be part of it, and along with the jabs and on with the movements to stop people marrying and everything else, so we're not having children. That may well be part of it. But let's not forget, if Trump stops the war, that is literally the top 25 of the military industrial complexes, the military industrial complex, top 25 companies they employ 2 million people in America, and it is worth 2.7 billion annually.
Wow. So there's a huge incentive to keep the war machine going, isn't there?
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
I mean, that is the reality. And you know that more than most people, because not only with a military background, but also understanding it from a journalistic perspective, a geopolitical perspective. I think these things are really important. Yes. Well, the root of all evil is the love of money as opposed to just money, right? So people are making comments and quotes in here. So where to now, Warren? Do you feel many people felt really sort of reinvigorated after the election last week and felt that, okay, we're finally being listened to? Do you think that is the case? Because I don't necessarily think it was about embracing Trump, but rather a rejection of all the woke mind virus, as Elon Musk calls it. I think people really have rejected that worldwide.
Yes, absolutely. He has promised to stop any LGBTQ nonsense going on in schools. He said that he's going to deport all illegal immigrants, and you can see straight away that everybody is very much up for that. Now, you can fool some of the people some of the time. And of course, Rebels are right. The inquiry with the head of security was laughable. She had no info and she couldn't agree on anything. And of course, she lost her job. But really, she took the fall for Christopher Wray. And if you are the head of the secret services and everything else, then of course, it is your job to make sure that nobody gets. And the very first thing you do is you get the principal out of there. So the moment you spot someone, it's principal to safety. They rush him off the stage. He's in a car, and that's it. The crowd, as they say, the crowd were pointing him out 45 minutes before the shot. That doesn't happen unless you've got insider help on that sort of thing. That is completely ridiculous. And the other thing that is really interesting, as you're saying, with the wars, we're just trading one war for another. You saw the other day how Maccabi Haifa Tel Aviv fans behaved in Amsterdam. And of course, Sky then took that down and said that they weren't behaving, ripping down Palestinian flags and beating people up. They were actually the victims, and it was a pogrom against the Israeli people and this, that, and the other. It wasn't. It was a bunch of football hooligans chanting all sorts of racist and horrible slogans. And basically, they came to Ajax, who do have a reputation for sorting people out. And they basically got ironed out in Amsterdam and then tried to turn that into something completely different. So I would say the coming war, and of course the Lebanon, we broke the story that they were actually the US document that we saw a week before they invaded the Lebanon and into southern Lebanon. They went exactly in the same places as the documents.
I think Lisa echoes what many of us feel, and that is, can you see a way forward to a more optimistic future with all the corruption in the world? But as you say, we're dealing with the military-industrial complex, and the whole purpose is just to keep it going. But do you think we're ever going to reach a stage where enough people will have woken up to stop this?
Yes, absolutely. And the best way you can do that, and I speak as somebody who speaks to military attaches in many countries at all times, speaks to many people in embassies. There are a lot of good people out there. They're just not in power. And the way you stop it is you stop any lobbyist money coming into the parliament. And then you have people, what you do is, I know this is going to sound awful, but you pay them much more so they are not tempted by that money. And of course, people will always be greedy. But if they're found to take money from any source whatsoever, apart from their normal pay, they should be fired and literally taken out of Congress and done for subverting the will of the people, whatever you want to do. But they should no longer be in a position of power and should be thrown out of the government. If you let these lobbyists into your parliament, the Israel lobby owns most of America, most of the American politicians and most of the British politicians. If you cut the lobbyists out, if you cut the big pharma out, you cut the military industrial complex out, then you have a chance. Otherwise, we're going to go down the same route.
This is an interesting one because you and I were obviously talking yesterday about some of the issues of British members of parliament now on the front bench. You have said absolutely heinous stuff about Trump, including West Streeting, including David Lammy. And Mama Bear wants your opinion on Trump and Starmer. Is it going to be a special relationship, Warren?
It's going to be especially frosty, and I'll tell you for why, because Starmer has said some terrible things. The head of finance, literally, of the Bank of England and the financial advisors have said some nasty things. David Lammy has said some absolutely ridiculous things, which make him completely untenable. I mean, under Keir Starmer's laws, if you called somebody else a Nazi, if somebody else called somebody else a Nazi, they get locked up for that. You would actually ask why Lammy hasn't been locked up. As somebody who moves in embassy circles and talks to everybody, he is, and I can tell you this, the Chinese, the Russians, the Americans think that Starmer and Lammy are an absolute joke. They don't even see them seriously.
Well, we don't take them seriously, so why should anybody else? So here's the thing, Warren. You're doing a lot of work also to do with North Korea at the moment. Talk to us.
Yes, well, we were hanging about the Chinese embassy, and of course they very nicely gave us information, and of course they've got satellites that could see an ice cube, literally sitting on a saucer from miles up in space. Now I can tell you unequivocally that North Koreans are not fighting in Russia, they are not fighting in Ukraine, and they're certainly not in Kursk. The idea is to say that the North Koreans are actually in Russia, that they're in Kursk, and therefore the Ukrainians need to use the long-range weapons to kill them. Therefore, you've got the ability then to fire long-range weapons into North Korea. Now, I'll tell you what North Korea are good at, because I've actually been there, is building these high-rise buildings, these apartment blocks, and of course they help rebuild Mariupol. And the Russian economy is growing so fast and so enormous, is it, that they need about 1 million people to work in the building industry, and probably about another 600,000 in the manufacturing industry. And of course, the North Koreans are fantastic at putting up these tower blocks. They put them up in about 7 weeks. And if you don't believe me, just go and have a look at Mariupol in Russia and see what they've done there, literally in months. And of course, they built that wonderful city on the coast in 7 months, a 3-mile strip of land. It looks absolutely fantastic.
Before you leave us, haven't you got a typhoon hitting you shortly in Manila?
Yes, we've got Typhoon Na that has just come through, and we've got another typhoon coming through as well, and hopefully that'll slide off to the left. Nika just missed us, and we're sort of hoping typhoon season that one doesn't hit us full on. But I'm sure we'll just hunker down and we'll be absolutely fine.
And get on with it, absolutely. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, as we used to say when I was growing up. Warren, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been an absolute education. And thank you for taking so many questions from our lovely viewers. We truly appreciate it. Everybody, you can catch Warren 6 days a week, I believe, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., Sunday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on warrenthornton.com. Also teams up with the lovely Lee Slaughter as well. And together, they're absolutely brilliant together, but they have lots of wonderful guests. And I will put a link in the description. Thank you so much, Warren. Have a brilliant day. Take good care of yourself. Everybody, Warren Thornton.
Thank you very much. God bless you all.
God bless you all, darling. Take care. Lovely to have you with us. Absolutely lovely to have you with us this morning. Thank you. We appreciate that. And yes. Interesting. By the way, that comment at the start when Warren said, and that I can't mention, I think he was actually referring to Israel, because there are concerns on YouTube about saying certain things. So he was just being diplomatic. He wasn't being evasive. He was being diplomatic, because I don't want any more strikes. I don't want any more strikes, but I could have got that wrong. I could have misunderstood that. Right. How are you? Who's letting off fireworks? Don't talk to me about fireworks. Annoying stuff. Good man, Warren, says LB. Thank you, Warren, says Vanessa. We need to do something about the legacy media and its constant stream of lies. Yes, I agree with you. Yes, absolutely. Legends standing tall for humanity. Beautiful sight. Hallelujah to that. Hallelujah to that. Before we bring in our next guest, let me just look at what happened with Richard D. Hall on Friday. Of course, filmmaker and journalist Richard D. Hall was back in the High Court on Friday for what's known as consequentials. And consequentials is after you've lost or won a case, you then submit to the court about how much should be paid. And this is an earlier picture that was taken. And this is of Richard D. Hall leaving court from an earlier hearing. Actually, no, I think this was from Friday's hearing. And the reason I know this was from Friday's hearing, because I can see lovely Matt, who actually joined us on Friday night in the background there. So I believe that is from Friday's hearing. And the other picture is of Martin Hibbert. So if you're not familiar, Richard, this is based on Richard being sued for harassment and GDPR. And he lost his harassment claim against Martin and Eve Hibbert, rather, in a judgment last month. Mrs. Justice Stein ruled in favour of the Hibberts, described Hall's behaviour as a negligent, indeed reckless abuse of media freedom. Hall had claimed the attack. So this is all centred around the Manchester Arena attack in 2017. May 2017, at an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. Martin Hibbert had claimed to be left with spinal cord injury. Eve, his daughter, had said to be left with severe brain damage. Hall claimed his actions, including filming Eve, were in the public interest as a journalist, and that millions of people have bought a lie about the attack. Hall had claimed that the attack was staged and that there was no bomb. He said there was a bang, but not a bomb. And it's interesting stuff. But at the hearing on Friday, the judge said that Hibbert and his daughter would each receive $22,500. Now, if anybody knows the story, they will know that 22 is something of an issue in the story that is highlighted, I believe, by Richard. And so what happened is, obviously, in total, they've been awarded £45,000 in damages. Jonathan Price, representing the Hibberts, said Hall's behaviour was towards the more oppressive end of the spectrum of harassing conduct. There were written submissions Price said a total of 75,000 in damages for the pair should be awarded, as well as at least 90% of their legal fees. Now, we're hearing that those legal fees may be in excess of £200,000. I think they're still drilling down on that. Yes. Yes, I hear that. Hibbert is right, got you. I've got to be careful with myself reading some of these comments because I could be done for libel or defamation. So I have to be very, very careful. And I don't need any more trouble, people. I really don't. And Paul Oakley, who represented Richard D. Hall, said that in written submissions that 7,500 each in damages would be more appropriate, adding there was no justification for aggravated damages. Paul Oakley said there is no allegation of malice, and that is really a fundamental point as far as damages are concerned. He told the court some of these harassment cases can get pretty nasty, but there was no vindictiveness. Paul Oakley also said in submissions that Mr. Hall's work was not about the claimants, who featured only minimally in the entirety of his recorded and written output. And so there you are. But here's the thing. How is this going to impact investigative journalism that questions the status quo and questions official narratives? Because it will. Oh, yes, it will. This, along with the Tommy Robinson case, seems absolutely tailor-made to continue to silence us from asking serious questions. And we must be allowed to ask questions. We must be allowed to ask questions. Many people believe that Richard D. Hall has a point. I mean, people do. There are also equally people who feel that he's harassed victims and that he should be absolutely made to pay for it. But the point is people are asking questions about the Manchester Arena bombing. And some of those questions are not easily answered. Yes, Jackie, they do appear to want us deaf and blind and not asking any questions. But I am deeply concerned what message this sends out regarding journalism. And can I just say, I think the idea that Richard D. Hall is part of the establishment is absolutely ridiculous. It's childish, ridiculous thinking. The only reason that he has received attention is not because he's part of the establishment, but because the BBC highlighted him. It's an attack by establishment media on Richard D. Hall to suggest that he's one of theirs, frankly, is ludicrous to me. It's childish thinking. Yes, Mels doesn't believe much of what she sees on a screen. Well, I think that sounds like all good sense, frankly, Mels. All good sense. So there you are. There you go. And he does have a point and has done nothing that I haven't seen the mainstream media do, says Kat. Yes. Yeah, interesting, says Flicking. Even if he was wrong, it doesn't deserve the fines. Free speech. Well, that's the thing is I think the clear message here is that free speech is not on our side. That is the reality. Yes, Spring did first go after him, Stephen, absolutely, and highlighted him. I don't actually think this court case would have happened if the BBC hadn't have targeted him. Yes, Ian Davis. And D. Hall says, D. Hall, is this Richard D. Hall in the comments? In a March 2024 article, Ian Davis concluded that he deserves support from all who care about the truth. Without free speech, we are doomed, says Jackie. We are indeed. They just don't want you talking about very obvious crimes, says Shug. And Silence, Healing in the Silence says the system only works in favor of the system. Even though there are a few cases that involve real justice, the majority get silenced. It feels like being paid to remain silent. And that is the thing, is I think whatever position you come down on, whether you agree with Richard D. Hall or you don't, it would appear to me that his actions, I've seen harassment. Believe me, I've seen harassment. And his actions didn't necessarily strike me as anything outside of actual reportage and journalism. But there you go. People sue you, then you have to be prepared to pay the piper, as they say. Yes, the deep state do indeed love their rituals. Yes, they do. And Ian Davis says Mel's has some excellent stuff on his Substack. I hear you. Right. Let us bring in our next guest. He's an oldie but a favourite, and I mean that in all the right ways possible. Yes, I do. Good morning, John Hendon. Lovely John Hendon.
Good morning, Sonia. And it's been a good few weeks since we last met.
A few weeks, John. And some for the
And some, yeah.
John was my regular Monday correspondent on Rise, which I co-hosted with Sean Ward. John was always absolutely brilliant. We loved him. He's a psychotherapist, but he's actually so much more than that. John, you're literally whizzing around the world, aren't you, spreading your good messages?
I am, and I'm whizzing off in a couple of hours to Hong Kong and then on to New Zealand.
I've got to show you some of these messages already. Look at this. Yay, John Hendon. We love you and we miss you.
That's very kind. Yes.
Oh, hi, John. Yes, absolutely. Oh, look, can we go? Look at this. Look at this. Well, let me, John Hart's. And you're an actual, oh, I've got to show you this one. You're an actual legend, John. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And we've missed you. We have missed you. Lovely, John. Morning, says Lisa. We have missed you, John. And thank you for being here, given that you are actually jetting off in a short while.
Yeah.
And
no
so
problem.
I'm really interested to get your take on the Lampard inquiry, which is something that you have an understanding about, and actually something that I bet you could have seen coming a long way off. And for those who, yes, exactly.
Yes.
For those who are unfamiliar, first of all, I should say to you that John has an extensive background in the NHS. Give people a little understanding of that, because there'll be some viewers who aren't familiar with you, John.
Yes, I was working out, actually, Sonia. Next year will be my 50th year working in psychological and emotional well-being and mental health services. And I worked for 22 years in the NHS mental health services as a manager and a practitioner. So I know exactly what goes on. And so some of the things that have come out or coming out in the Lampard inquiry, I'm not at all surprised.
John, did you just say your 50th year?
My 50th year working in mental health service. Next year.
Oh, you don't look that old, John.
I know. It's the Camay soap. Oh, can we say Camay?
Say whatever. Yeah, absolutely fine. You look fabulous. But the thing is I think, John, you are testament to somebody who's leading a decent life, who has dealt with a lot of their own demons.
Yes, indeed.
Recently. And do you know what?
Yes.
The business is showing all over your face. And I think that's important, because your message is so important. And for those who are not familiar with the Lampard inquiry, it's a statutory inquiry which is investigating mental health inpatient deaths in Essex. It's chaired by Baroness Kate Lampard. It really essentially continues the work of the Essex Mental Health Independent Inquiry. We've had Melanie Leahy on various shows that I've been on, talking about how her son Matthew died while in the care of Essex Mental Health. John, talk to us about the Lampard inquiry, your thoughts.
Yes, I mean, we've, Lucinda Lidstone and I, as you know, we were involved in the campaign for psychiatric drug abuse. And I think it was a couple of years ago, we were in touch with Melanie and spoke extensively with her, and had her stories on our news feed, etc. And she was one of the main drivers in bringing about the Lampard statutory inquiry. So people have to appear and have to tell the truth of what happened. And that's despite the cover-ups that are well documented that goes on in NHS mental health trusts. So the Lampard inquiry, yes, is a wonderful opportunity not only to look under the flat stones of what actually happened in the Linden Centre, where there were over 10 suicides in a fairly short period of time, but also they're investigating 2,000 untoward deaths between the year 2000, 2000, between the year 2000 and the year 2020. And it is astonishing how many deaths there have been. So I really hope there's an opportunity here to lift the lid on what goes on in these units.
I think people have natural concerns about any inquiries, John, and about how inquiries are often really just to kind of solidify an official narrative. What is your sense so far regarding this inquiry? Is there a sense that, I know it's a tough question to ask, but is there a sense that the aim is to get to the truth or to protect the NHS?
I just fear it's going to be another whitewash and another expensive exercise, like foot and mouth disease in 2002, like the Farley Hospital inquiry going way back in 1963 in Bristol made recommendations of how people with learning difficulties in institutions to be treated. And that was just on the shelf, gathered dust. And then, of course, the Winterbourne happened a few years ago in the same city. And why weren't the Farley Hospital recommendations implemented? So people forget about these. So my concern is it's another whitewash. However, there is a wonderful opportunity here, because I was refreshing my memory this morning, actually, of the terms of reference of the inquiry. And there are 10 terms of reference. And number 4 is, the inquiry will make recommendations to improve the provision of mental health inpatient care. So there's an opportunity here to make recommendations of how to avoid the diagnostic labeling, incarceration and drugging of people, which is what happens in these units by and large, and where biomedical model psychiatry reigns supreme. And there are alternative models for this, and so there's an opportunity there. And then item 5, terms of reference 5, investigations will focus on the trust. However, the chair may make national recommendations as she considers appropriate. So we have an opportunity here, and I call on my former NHS colleagues, managers and staff, and you know what happens in these institutions. And, there's 20 things, harmful things that happen to patients. And I asked a former colleague, well, a new colleague actually, who works in a unit a couple of years ago. And I said, look, these are the 20 things. Are they still happening? And he said, definitely 18.
Can you give us some idea what some of those harmful things are, John?
Oh, ignoring inpatients' requests for basic essentials, giving them persuading them to take drugs that they don't need, waking them up in the night to give them night sedation. That's a classic. And lots of dehumanizing things, like taking away belts, taking away shoelaces, and those sort of things, which might be used for taking their own life, and all sorts of things that are very disempowering. And if I'd thought of the question beforehand, I could have given you the whole 20.
No, not at all.
But it's terrible. It's what goes on, really.
Let me ask you about something, John, because this is something that often crops up with people who are dealing with mental health and how when their loved ones need help. What is the issue about sending people away from their local area and across the country? There's a problem there, isn't there?
There is, and that should never be happening. I mean, I've heard stories being sent 250 miles away because there was a unit in Cumbria that had a vacancy. And this is especially true with young people who get sent away, adolescent mental health services. And it's wrong because the families may be quite poor themselves. They're suffering grief at having lost their loved one into an institution, but then to have to pay the fare to visit them is unacceptable. And it's often because there's not enough provision locally, and so they have to farm them out. That's my understanding anyway.
You've blown people's mind with the idea of waking people up to give them sedation. I mean, that in itself should tell us everything, right?
Yes. 10 o'clock, what happens is 90% of people who are admitted to inpatient psychiatric units are drugged within 24 hours. Side effects of the drugging is it makes them sleepy and lethargic. So naturally, they go to bed early and they go to sleep quite quickly. They may be written up for night sedation. So night staff, in my experience over many years, some of the more zealous would go in, wake them up. Wake up, Jimmy, have your night sedation. He's already asleep.
It feels sick. Julie said no better than sleep deprivation. And of course, the concern about sending people across the country is it destabilizes them.
Mm.
It makes it
Mhm.
difficult for any of their loved ones to visit them, right? So that
Mhm.
would
It
be
does.
also an
Yes.
issue as well. These things
Yes.
are deeply concerning. So I know, and obviously you and I know we have to be incredibly careful because we're on a YouTube
We
live stream and
do
they have their
indeed.
medical misinformation policy, but there are some things that we absolutely can talk about. And one of the things I think that we need to address is the issue of the apparent reluctance within the NHS for talking therapies. Am I accurate in saying there's a reluctance?
You are, and do you know the cost of mental ill health, or as you know, I call it emotional distress. The
Yes.
cost to our country every year is £300 billion. That's the economic, social, and other costs. £300 billion every year. Now, I think it's about 21. Is it? Yes, I've got to think. No, it's 12 billion are spent on mental health. Wait for it, and this is quoted in the inquiry: mental health care and treatment. And this mental health care and treatment saw 2,000 deaths in EPUT, Exeter Partnership Trust, in that 20-year period I mentioned. Now, if that 12 billion was spent, or even half of it was spent on talking therapies and other approaches to emotional distress each year, we wouldn't need places like the Linden Centre. We wouldn't need these units up and down the country for people to be incarcerated. I mean, one of the specialties that I teach, and I'm teaching in Hong Kong next week, is solution-focused suicide prevention. Now, I've shown my book before.
Let's see it, John. Let's see it.
On the topic, yes. I mean, I have been teaching this now in over 20 countries, and the story is the same. 0 suicide on caseloads.
What does that mean?
0 suicides means no suicides. People can't, when they have the solution-focused approach to suicide prevention,
Wow.
it's impossible to take their lives because hope is there.
We've talked about this before, haven't we? The importance.
Yeah, we have. Yes.
The questions are coming in thick and fast. There's comments here. I want you to address this if you don't mind. Dee says, this breaks my heart. My son is going through this now. What can I do? John, you're the best man for the job to answer that for Dee. What can she do?
Well, I mean, get hold of a second-hand copy or a new copy of the book and go to chapter 6. And there's a whole load of questions you can ask, things, presuppositional questions like, when you're through this difficult time, what changes will you make in your life? Phrasing to that, there's the graveside scenario question, which I've designed specifically for people who want to be dead by tomorrow. That sounds fascinating. And I hear stories every year about lives saved. So, Essex Partnership Trust could do no worse than having 2-day training courses for their staff, and the suicides would go down. I mean, that would be phenomenal. That would not only save lives, but it would also save financially, right? I mean, but here's but the point is, of course, is that the medical model takes absolute precedent, doesn't it? It does. And that's the issue we're really dealing with, isn't it? It is. And there's the other thing. There's 4 entities having a light shone on them during this Lampard inquiry. Yeah. One is the actual practices that were going on within their units. So that Essex Partnership Trust is responsible for, because obviously they employ the staff and they commission the units. There's also light being shone on biomedical psychiatry, and it's widely known the harms and deaths that it causes every year. And so, why are these approaches still being used when we know it doesn't work? So that's the light being shone on them. And then drug abuse, the pharmaceutical industry are what I call big psychopharma, the manufacturers, and I'm being very careful here, Sonia, the big psychopharma that manufactures antipsychotics, antidepressants, and anti-anxiolytics. They are having the light shone on them because lots of those people who died were drugged by those drugs. And we know that the side effects of several increase suicidal thinking and self-harming thoughts.
Now, this is a given. Many studies have confirmed this, right?
Yes, they have. That's another thing. And the fourth light that's being shone on is on the NHS nationally, that spends £12 billion on mental health services, when we know that there are other services, there are emotional well-being services, crisis drop-in centres, befriending schemes. We can have psychotropic drug withdrawal centres to spend this money on. We can have, there's the New Zealand. I was privileged to contribute to the New Zealand inquiry into mental health services after, I think it was 5 years ago, they had 666 suicides in 1 year in New Zealand. Many of them were involved in the NHS in New Zealand, the mental health services, which is the DHBs, the district health boards. And so there was a campaign to replace those services. And would you believe, whole health and well-being hubs where people can go along, for advice and talk to people. Many different types of talking therapies, EMDR, rewind technique, etc. So much can be provided that doesn't dehumanize and stigmatize people.
Right. So those are important lights that are being shone on how we approach people with mental health issues. Do you think Mel's has got a point here that the reluctance about talking therapy is because it's not profitable?
It will be. I mean, with suicide prevention, people in acute suicide distress, 3 sessions. So if a therapist paid £100 an hour, that costs only £300. Yet what happens in Essex? They get admitted to a unit, the Linden Centre, they're kept in for 3 or 4 months, then have outpatient appointments, maybe daycare, etc. Costs hundreds of thousands instead of 300, which is this solution-focused approach.
So, I mean, it's interesting because, and I love that approach that you're taking there, John, is on the one hand, you are very concerned that the Lampard inquiry has all the makings of a cover-up, of a whitewash. But on the other hand, you're also saying that it is possible that even within that, really important stuff that we need to know about will get highlighted. Yeah,
and what I'd say to that, to your viewers here, Sonia, have a look at the terms of reference of the Lampard inquiry, and the first page comes up. You'll see the 10 points. Look at numbers 4 and 5, and see how you might contribute, especially if you're working for EPUT, the Essex Partnership Trust. And make recommendations to Baroness Lampard, because she could then say she will make recommendations to about mental health care nationally. So there's an opportunity here. And the other thing I'd say when I was a manager of mental health services, and you might find this shocking, part of my job was to be involved in cover-ups. Part of my job was to cover up professional incompetence and professional misconduct.
Because you were in a managerial role, weren't you?
I was in a managerial role, and that was part of my job. And also to deflect relatives' complaints, kick them into the long grass, and all those sort of strategies we used to use. And so I implore managers in Exeter, in Essex Mental Health Trust, to actually tell the truth what happens. And also staff who've left, maybe retired, they've got no axe to grind, they won't get the sack because they've already retired. Come forward and say what happens and what happened, because you've got an opportunity here of not only helping the relatives put closure on those 2,000 deaths over that 20-year period, but also to prevent another 2,000 deaths in the future, in future decades. And in other parts, this is just one trust, but the whole of the country where this is happening, we can have an opportunity here, and staff and managers could come forward and say, look, this is what happens, and this is what happened with these patients, and blah, blah, blah. And that could have real impact. And if enough people come forward, change is inevitable.
That's astonishing. So you're really talking about a culture that actually exists in the NHS where there are departments dedicated to covering up the harms that are done to people,
Yeah.
John.
Well, it's the manager's job to put the lid on things and keep things sweet. Our first loyalty is to the institution. That was always it.
Wow.
And the second loyalty was to the patient. So the first loyalty was to the institution. And
Wow.
that's the job. That was part of the job.
No wonder you had to leave it eventually.
Oh, I could. Yes, I mean,
Because how can you live with yourself, really? Like, I know that's a bit of an out there question, but how do you live with yourself knowing that you're part of the cover up?
Well, it's past tense, of course. I was part of the
Sure,
cover-up.
absolutely.
Yeah, I live with myself because I'm campaigning now with others, and I'm in the vanguard of community mental health.
Well, you've changed everything. You are changing everything. You are
spreading the good news. Yes.
And what you've done, John, is you've taken your experience to be able to inform other people about what's going on, and that is a brilliant thing to do.
Yes.
This is an important question. Please, would you help us answer it? It's from Gary. He says, where has the mental health increase come from? When I was young, I'm 56, never heard of mental health when I was younger. Is it because of alternative media? We now know. So is it a case, or do we have an increase? Because surely, again, being really careful, but after the last 4 years, people's mental health must have been impacted, right?
Yes. I mean, the COVID nonsense really, with people being confined to their bedrooms, confined to home, it had a detrimental effect on their emotional well-being. And we've seen it. I talk to colleagues and they've seen it coming through. I've got a sister-in-law who's a nursery nurse, and she said after it, youngsters came through and they weren't even potty trained, some of them, and they had very few social skills. And this is obviously having a knock-on effect. So I think there's a lot more talk about it. And it's interesting, actually, because when I first started in 1975, working in a big institution, people talked about psychiatric patients, and then it changed quickly to mental illness patients.
Ooh.
And then it transitioned to mental ill health, and now ludicrously people say, oh, I've got mental health. Well, if you've got mental health, rejoice.
Right. Oh yes, that's
they call it mental health. It's not. It's mental ill health.
Right.
But I prefer to sweep that term aside and say it's emotional distress, which gets it out of the clutches of biomedical psychiatry. And normal people like us can actually work with it and help them get emotional well-being restored. And
I love what you've done with your knowledge, John. I absolutely love it. And it was no attack on you saying about, the fact that you were part of that, because that was the culture you were in. And the thing is, it's important for people to understand that there's, in its own way, it's a kind of form of brainwashing when you're part of the NHS, isn't it? Because it's like big pharma is essentially everything, right? Yes,
it is. Well, it's big pharma, and I call them the terrible twins. Big pharma and big psychiatry together, they work in tandem, and the bulk of that £12 billion every year spent on mental health services goes to them. That's wrong. That 12 billion went to talking treatments. It went to, EMDR, rewind technique. There's many other services. Actually, that's an interesting topic for a future program, Sonia, to say, how it can be and where centers of excellence have been identified.
Love that.
Which don't cost that much money, and people, it's an emotional wellness service, not a mental illness service like the NHS mental health services peddles, because once you're in the system, very hard to get out.
Exactly, it is. And the thing is that I want to go back to hope before you leave, because I think that's a really good way to end. But Shell is missing your flip charts, John. Do you remember?
It's there, but I've nothing to write on.
There you go. But the thing, you see, the thing is that my viewers who know you, they hold you in great esteem and fondness because they know what you've done over the last few years to raise awareness to this. So kind of fingers crossed, hope for the best from the Lampard inquiry. But just before you leave us, John, let's just have a little conversation about hope and the importance of it when it comes to our emotional state.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the other specialty, I specialize in suicide prevention. I also specialize in severe trauma and stress recovery. And, 3 stages: victim, survivor, and thriver. And people can thrive after trauma.
Have you got your book with you, John? Let's show us
Well,
it.
only as you mentioned it. And I'm delighted to say it's now translated into Ukrainian.
Wow.
And as we speak, a Russian translation is almost complete.
Look at this, John. Your wisdom got me through 9 months of hell, to be honest, said Teresa. Look at that. So no, when you get that,
fantastic.
that makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it? When you hear stuff like that.
It does. And I was working in Poland last month, and a woman stayed right to the end till everyone had gone. She came up to me and she said, "You have given me hope here. I was in a serious road traffic crash, broken pelvis, broken leg, and broken ribs, and I've been hiding in my home. I forced myself to come here on this 2-day workshop. I now have hope and belief that I can thrive after that terrible crash."
And just so people are absolutely aware, your upbringing, your childhood was not a bed of roses.
No,
you did not have an easygoing, privileged life. You had to overcome your own demons, didn't you?
I did. 5% of it was happy.
Yeah. 5% of it. You
5%.
worked that out. What percentage of your life is happy now, do you reckon?
Oh, well, I would say 95% happy now,
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Because, I'm thriving along with other people that I meet, come to my workshops, and the stories I hear, and just delight training people and having those stories and reactions from people. And then people then email me afterwards, so especially suicide prevention, say, "Since we had that training from you last year, we haven't had a single suicide in our service."
We love that, John. Absolutely love that. And Randy makes a good point here. This kind of reminds me of that statement, and that is, it's no mark of good health to be, well adjusted in a sick society or whatever. And this is the point of Randy's comment, I think. And that is, you can be mentally healthy, but our environment is sick, right? So we have to work to overcome that, don't we?
Yeah, so I think that's probably my 5%, maybe, that when I think of every week, there's something that is sickening with it. Yeah, PMA, positive mental attitude, is good.
Yes,
just to finish off on hope, this is really, I'd say to people in my training courses, whatever the presentation, whatever people are coming to you with, whatever their trauma, whatever their terrible things they've happened, if you maintain a stance of hope and optimism, they cannot not be affected by that, because their radar is attuned and they'll pick up that you're hopeful and optimistic they're going to get through this, and they catch it. They contaminate it in a good way. And that's key.
It is key. Cheeky Sprite, I hope you've taken something away. 60 years survivor. I always wished I could feel like a thriver. I'm going to put a link to both of John's books in the description. I highly recommend I don't know the other book so well, but I do know about How to Thrive, isn't it?
It's called yes, it's called What It Takes to Thrive.
That got me through some really bad, dark days, John.
Yeah.
That did, because it's practical. It's a practical approach.
Very practical. It's a handbook.
It is. And we love it.
So that's one. And the other one is Preventing Suicide, the solution-focused approach. But if you just Google my name, both these books come up.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. John, be thankful and hopeful and make plans for enjoyment, says Mike. Right. We hope.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you back with us today. Thank you so much.
Real pleasure on my part too. Yes.
Absolutely. So many beautiful people in this chat who have and are surviving community, and support is so important. Yes, it is. Support is so important. And everybody, this is really the tremendous John Hendon. Have a terrific trip, John. John, take good care of yourself. And we hope to see you back soon. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
bye
much,
to you, Sonia, and to all your viewers.
In the silence. Take care, John. God bless you, love.
Bye
Take
now.
care.
Bless you. God
wonderful
bless.
Human being. He's a wonderful human being. I nearly had a heart attack when he said that he's been doing this 50 years. He doesn't look anywhere near that age, does he? Amazing. Most insightful. Thank you, John. Thanks, John. Keep up the great work. Thank you, John. Thanks, and good to see you again, isn't it? Yes. Thank you, John. So many thank you, Johns. Come back soon, says Kath. Bye, John, says LB. And on and on and on. What a fabulous man. I do love John. And yes, must have Lucinda back with us again, ASAP. Both love them both very much. They're both absolutely brilliant what they do. Really important stuff. Right. Let me move on. What am I going to? Oh, look, when I was traveling at the weekend, I thought this was interesting. This was at Vauxhall. Vauxhall Station has been adopted by LGBT Hero and the Southwestern Railway Pride Network, right? Where are the sick and disabled heroes? Where are the other heroes? We seem to have a shortage of heroes. We need more heroes. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. How are you today in the chat? How are you? You seem very lively today. You do. And rapper Sean Diddy Combs has applied for bail for a fourth time with very strict conditions, despite having it previously turned down repeatedly. And Diddy's lawyers have now slammed claims of a second victim in alleged sex trafficking operation. Combs remains in jail in Brooklyn, having pleaded not guilty to charges of sex trafficking, along with accusations he coerced and abused women and used blackmail and violence to silence his victims. The bail package continues, really. Submitted a new $50 million bail package backed by his Florida mansion in the hope he will be released after being held there for the past 8 weeks. So since his arrest, we've seen upwards of 120 alleged victims who have already come forward. Diddy maintains his innocence, is demanding a trial as early as spring. He actually broke his silence from behind bars for his birthday last week, his 55th birthday. And he called his children to, actually his children rather called him to wish him a happy birthday while he awaits trial. And his son, Justin Combs, shared a video in which you can hear Diddy telling his children he is proud of all of them and looking forward to seeing them soon after they sing happy birthday to him. And on Friday, his legal team filed a new motion, as I say, in an attempt to get him out of jail. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And despite the fact that they are offering a comprehensive bail package, it is not going to happen. And the lawyers have used another example of that is quite similar, they say, to Diddy's, which included a case involving a CEO in which they were accused of sex trafficking dozens of young men, along with an accomplice who had intimidated witnesses. And Diddy's lawyers argued that the government had asked for only 10 million bond and 500K bond, respectively, which is less than the $50 million package they are offering for Diddy. So that should tell you that the state is absolutely determined not to allow him to have bail. And why should they? There's a lot of people there. And the thing is part of the issue and part of the charges is to do with allegations of intimidation to potential victims and potential people coming forward. And Diddy's team further shut down claims of a second victim. Again, legal documents filed on Friday. And Diddy's lawyers went after government claims that there had been a potential second victim, said the original indictment had listed an unnamed victim, which is believed to be his ex-girlfriend, Cassie, who Diddy dated from 2007 through to 2018. Last year in November, Cassie had accused Sean Combs of both rape and abuse over the course of their relationship. And just one day after Cassie had filed that lawsuit, the pair reached a settlement, which has not been disclosed. And Diddy's lawyers have repeatedly said that the video that was released of him beating Cassie in a hotel corridor was done in order to force through the grand jury and the indictment that then followed. Yes. Stephen thinks he's up to it. It is up to it. Let me say that again, Stephen. You are saying, wait, what's that? I think he is in it up to his neck. Absolutely. His attorneys have also accused victim one, as I say, thought to be Cassie, of extortion and claimed they had asked for $30 million in order to obtain rights for a tell-all book about the past relationship. And can we be clear here that J-Lo, ex-girlfriend of Diddy, is far from off the hook? No wonder she's spending her time doing daft things like rallying for Harris. She's far from off the hook because there is this new lawsuit which alleges that there was a sexual assault against a 13-year-old girl. And this was said to be on the same night that Jennifer Lopez and Diddy, because remember, they were formerly a unit, a romantic partnership. But this attack on this 13-year-old girl was said to be on the night that the pair, Diddy and J-Lo, were pictured arguing at a party together before leaving later on alongside his entourage. And the alleged incident is said to have occurred at a house later that night. And the timing adds a sort of troubling layer to the evening's events. It raises questions about the dynamics of Diddy and J-Lo's relationship during the time. The new legal filing claims Diddy had allegedly aggressively approached the young girl with a crazed look in his eyes before assaulting her. The young girl claims that an unidentified male celebrity also sexually assaulted her, while Diddy and an unnamed female celebrity watched. There is no suggestion that this woman was Jennifer Lopez. Diddy, of course, has denied all allegations. All allegations. His attorney said he never sexually assaulted anyone and said the most recent barrage of filings were nothing but clear attempts to garner publicity. So there you go. What are your thoughts, people? Jackie says J-Lo can't act, can't sing, but she's a superstar. She's a superstar. You know why? Because she knows. She knows. Oh, yeah, she knows. She knows. These people know things. Yes, Cheeky. I was late to the show and just caught the end of John's participation. Thank you. I found him on internet and will look at his material. I feel it must have been meant to be. Yes, Cheeky Sprite, it was. Yes, I have looked somewhat, but not recently, actually, Wimboos, at Tiffany Dover. That nurse, do you remember that? Collapsed after the jab. What happened to her? She was supposed to have resurfaced after that, right? I'll check it out. See what's going on. And also in the UK, just moving on from Puffy, did anyone experience the substantial outage with the NatWest banking app yesterday? I believe it was viewer Carl recently who said that we have to be increasingly aware of the problems with using the apps of anything, because to do so is obviously transferring yourself to a digital system. Well, NatWest had a huge outage, rather. It went down. It left thousands unable to access their money. And this is what we have to be seriously careful about, because and I literally talked about this 8 years ago on the Alan Titchmarsh show when I was still very much part of mainstream media, kind of talking head TV shows. And we did a segment on a cashless society, and I was up against a banker who was totally pro it, and I was totally against it. And I said exactly this. And that is, there are too many glitches within the banking system. But imagine if you speak out against the government, right? They'll just press a few buttons and you won't be able to get your money. And that is what happens when you have a digital system. And every time we get these banking glitches, it should be enough to remind people we cannot afford to go cashless. We cannot leave our safety and security in the hands of bankers, for goodness sake. Some of the worst people in the world, next to journalists, although obviously not myself. So anybody in our chat experienced that? Did anybody experience that? Wimboos, I did. Oh, going back to that Tiffany Dover thing again. Right. Yes. What's that? Anyone else notice how upgraded 5G fiber optic internet is being deliberately downgraded so it doesn't work quickly? I don't know that. Jackie's worried we're all going to be digital slaves. We should be. Joseph, is that true? Did anybody else notice that? Oh, wait. That's something else that George is talking about. This is why sleeping rough has become accepted with 160 deaths last year alone. That's outrageous amount going on there. This is interesting. Joseph, what's that? Notice that the royalty and other dignitaries weren't wearing their medals as in other times. What, yesterday? Is that right? Let me just check this out. Because I've got an image, right? He's blooming right, you know. Look at that. Whoa, Joseph, any idea why they weren't? That is so curious, because normally the royals are absolutely laden down with medals that they didn't win, right? What's going on? That is very curious. Thank you for pointing that out. I love finding out that. Ooh, yes. We're all wowing about this. Joseph, well done for bringing that to the table. I didn't see it. Well, you see it now because we've got the image right there. They do love their medals generally, don't they? So why was that? That's made me curious. Randy, another ritual. Yes. Must have pawned the silver. They're poor, says David King. Blame the costume designer. Symbolism will be their downfall, says Arcath. Indeed, indeed. Right, let us move to the next stage. I want to talk about CJs. Oh, got some our geoengineering spot. And one of the reasons why we talk about weather manipulation around here is because mainstream simply won't. Yeah, Peter, isn't that strange? They're not wearing their medals. See, this is what I love about our viewers. They're like so observant. They notice these things. I literally, I've looked at those images from yesterday and that didn't cross my mind. And a lot of people are like, wow, brilliant. Time for them to go, says Ian. Right? Very strange indeed. Exactly. Some blue sky today, Shalini. Someone's been meddling, says Marcuson. Indeed. I wonder what that meant. It means something. That was not an accident. That was very deliberate. What does it mean? I'm going to have to do a deep dive and find out. Right. Let us talk geoengineering. So this is interesting. Martin left a comment on Monday's show saying, on the 4th November, I observed that every single cloud in the sky over central London was made up of different length trails, all of which were gradually dissipating. I've given up asking people to look up in order to inform them that these streams are man-made and they are witnessing a crime scene because of the derisory looks. Having watched and taken pictures of the sky on a regular basis of late, this was absolutely the worst and most blatant I have ever seen. I have sufficient photographic evidence taken over time and it's undeniable. Send it to us. And remember, we showed a video, didn't we, from one of our viewers. Was it Hazel? Please forgive me if I've got the name wrong. One of our viewers who had sent in on Friday, I think it was Friday, a video. Actually, I think Martin's comment was from Friday and Jen's comment was also from Friday. And it was in response to that video because we couldn't quite work out what the very thin lines were. They weren't rain, they weren't sleet, they weren't snow, didn't know what it was. And Jen said, we had that very fine rain on Merseyside too. I don't go out in it. I don't trust it. The sky has been blanketed for about a week now. No sun at all. Vile. And today's images come from Carolyn. Let me show you them. Hold on 2 secs. Let's bring them up. Look at the state of that. Thank you, Carolyn, for sending those in. Carolyn said, I kept meaning to send the attached photos to you to demonstrate those strange white lines crisscrossing the sky. This was taken 29th of June 2024 in Greenford, Middlesex, location near to RAF Northolt. So people may say, well, planes are flying in and out, but come on, people, you cannot say that is normal. And Carolyn really enjoyed that video we showed recently. And that was actually a brilliant video, which was like a very slow capture of what was taking place. And so, but these images, look at it. Look at the state of it. I mean, I'm just going to blow that up so you can see that as a full screen, right? Oh, let me see if I can get that as a full screen so you get the full impact of it. Oh, that's the same. Look at that, though. That is not normal. Nobody can tell me, right, Shalini is under a flight path, right? These are not normal flight paths. No, they're not. Absolutely not. Nobody can tell me that this is normal or natural. Beats and tapes get straight to the point. Chemtrails. And Jones says the sheep will take no notice of those images. Oh, Kath, skies above me are covered this morning. Anybody else's skies covered this morning? I mean, it's obvious, isn't it, Drum? Absolutely obvious. It's just this. It is absolutely impossible to be anything else. Impossible. Jackie, we forgive your typos. No problem. Not once did I see that when living in London a few years ago. Oh, it's absolutely on the increase. No doubt about it. Absolutely on the increase in recent times. No, I am in no doubt about that whatsoever. What have you got there, Randy? Now it's so foggy in Denmark, we do not even see the sky and that web anymore. That was how the sky looked in 2017. We are way beyond that here. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that there'll come a point where it's so normalized, it will almost meld and blend into the sky and we won't even be able to see it. Crafty Kim can't even remember what normality is anymore. I hear you, Kim, but I'm telling you what, I can remember enough to know that this is not normal. And Soul Sand, you're in France, completely covered here, thick grey and weird. Yes, Shalini, I remember that. How clear the skies were during lockdown. It was amazing, wasn't it? So thank you so much, Carolyn, for sending those images in. And I will have another series of your pictures on Friday, because I think it's important to keep sharing them, because if nothing else, it makes some of us feel less insane. What hologram, Frank? What hologram are you talking about? Stella says, I point this out to people and they just give a blank stare. Well, or you know what? Each one teach one. Let's keep doing it, right? I think that's the way forward. That's what we have to do. And I received an email from Caroline, not Carolyn, Caroline. Carolyn was the chemtrails and Caroline is asking about something else. And I think it's interesting. Caroline says, I often tune into Wake Up. And I'm curious to know if you think Stephen Russell was among the very first to be on the receiving end of the now ubiquitous online cancellation phenomenon. It also puzzles me that no one has written a biography of his life. Lim Franks attended his memorial service in 2020 and Tiggy Walker tweeted, saddened, yet there appears to be a massive disconnect between aspects of his work that were pioneering and his legacy. Johnny Walker does not even mention him in his memoir of recovery from illness when he received treatment. Have you any insider knowledge? Well, I don't know whether I have any insider knowledge as such, Caroline, but for those who aren't familiar, Stephen became more widely known as the Barefoot Doctor. That was the pseudonym that he operated under. He was a practitioner. He returned to London in 1983 from his travels. He ran an acupuncture practice for 17 years. He facilitated self-help workshops. He attracted celebrity clients, including Madonna. He wrote 21 books, including Barefoot Doctor's Handbook for the Urban Warrior. And he was absolutely attacked by mainstream medicine. Mainstream medical professionals, so this is where the cancel culture comes into it, Caroline. Mainstream medical professionals criticized the advice given by him. He had an Observer column for a period of time. They said that it was founded on traditional beliefs rather than science. Do you know what? I know for a fact that traditional beliefs, such as, Chinese medicine, is not to be scoffed at, is not to be dismissed. There are thousands of years of imperial evidence to back it up. And that was what Stephen was operating on. He was operating on traditional understanding of well-being, right? And the attack from mainstream medicine was huge and significant. And we all know that is one of the modus operandi, is to attack people, is to accuse them of predatory behavior. And guess what he was accused of? That's right. He was accused of sexual predatory behavior by several women. Nothing ever resulted of it. I think this, Caroline, I have to say that, yes, I think he probably was one of the very first people to suffer from cancellation culture. But I think this was an attack on alternative health. He was seen as somebody who was spearheading alternative health, and they didn't like that. He was too popular. Big Pharma and its multiple representatives and shills had to bring him down. He was bringing too much credibility to alternative medicine and alternative approaches away from the mainstream allopathic treatment. And Stephen Russell was forced to issue an extraordinary statement in which he denied any of the allegations against him. But we've seen it over and over and over again. Right. And that is sometimes when people get too big or too problematic for the establishment, they send in allegations of abuse. I mean, that happens. That absolutely happens. But Stephen, for his death, he obviously not after his death, but Stephen denied all allegations that were made to the patient group witness. And I also think that this was an attack on talking therapies versus the prevalence of antidepressants. A lot really of what John was saying was also where what John Hendon, our guest, was saying, was also what Stephen Russell was saying. And Caroline, I think you're absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me of Stephen Russell. Really important work and a leader in many respects, because he was starting to make mainstream alternative therapies, which of course they didn't like at all. Not one bit. Let me read your comments. What's that? Here we go. What's this? I love the Barefoot Doctor books. They changed my life in my early 20s, and what I learned has stayed with me since. Same. Absolutely same. Yes. And what else have I got there? Sorry, great show. Oh, what's this? It's lovely Debbie Evans. Hello, Debbie. What's going on? Horrified biological psychiatry. Eek. Got ya. Debbie Evans, UK column. Brilliant woman. Therapists need... Eric says therapists need therapy. Absolutely right, they do. So yes, absolutely. Go back to what Caroline said. Yeah, I think he probably was absolutely one of the first victims of online cancel culture. Got you. Thank you for again. We have some of the most brilliant viewers, don't we? They raise up these awarenesses and these issues that could have kind of like drifted past into the ether and, you know, never to resurface again. And they say, no, oi, not. What happened to Stephen Russell? I love that. Absolutely love that. I'm still thinking, why didn't they wear their medals? And obviously not their medals because they didn't earn them, but why didn't they wear medals yesterday? Why was that? I'm still thinking about that now. Yes. Right. Somebody asked me about the farmers' protest coming up this month. Thousands of farmers are set to descend on London on November the 19th, which is next week, in protest about the government's extension of inheritance tax. And the Metropolitan Police have given the march the green light. And there's been a growing backlash, of course, from the farming community following the decision. The demonstration has been organised alongside a National Farmers Union lobbying event. After the union told supporters to stay away from the city if they didn't have a ticket, saying it could not take responsibility for people in the streets. I have a lot of problems with unions. These days, they appear to be very little more than gatekeepers, right? The National Farming Union appears to very much be letting people down, right? Why shouldn't there be widespread protesting on the streets? I'm really looking forward to seeing what farmers who are not at the NFU lobbying event are going to be doing. Mr. Bailey, who's an arable farmer from Staffordshire, said, well, let me just have a look at this. Clive Bailey is the protest organizer, founder of the Farming Forum, said there were 2,000 registrations in the first 2 hours of the event being launched. The farmer said that he could see a number of attendees getting past 10,000. And Mr. Bailey pointed out is they weren't organising a rally, they weren't organising a march type event. It was becoming very obvious that farmers were desperate for somebody to take the lead and organise something else. He added, we're not wanting to take the European French farmer route of burning tyres in the streets and inconveniencing everybody. So we're positively saying, don't bring tractors, don't cause problems. This is peaceful. We want to keep the public on side. We don't want to bring the capital city to a stop or disrupt roads. That is a good shout. Because what you need is the public on side, right? So again, the NFU has emphasised that its event will not be a protest. Why ever not? It will be 1,800 NFU members in 3 rotations of 600 who will lobby parliamentarians at Church House, Westminster. The union said that there were legal issues preventing members turning up in large numbers. Yeah, the legal issues called gatekeeping. I'm so sick of it, right? Let them get out there in their many numbers. And I agree, don't bring your tractors, don't tee off, or don't tick off rather the public. But you can get the public on side. It's really worth it. Do it. I think it's a great idea. Great idea. Right. What else have I got, people? What else have I got? Because I don't want to forget anything. Can I just say, because I loathe these people. Did you see, after all the bad press, obviously last week to do with the royals, King Charles, 76th birthday coming up. Do you know how he's celebrating? He's opening essentially 2 new food distribution hubs, right? He'll be enjoying his banquet of quail's eggs and poor people's tears while the starving and impoverished get to dine on food thrown away by organizations, right? And it makes me absolutely sick. This is one of their PR attempts, because obviously what we've seen over this last week is William is claiming that he knows how to end homelessness, and ITV, if ever there was a gatekeeping channel, ITV is up there, and ITV gave him a 2-part series in which to pontificate about ending homelessness. And then there was a further documentary, not on ITV, on Channel 4, which actually exposed that William was a slum landlord. William is a slum landlord, and so obviously things are going very, very badly for them, because they keep calling Camilla Queen. Isn't she like formerly Queen Consort. Anyway, she's now like doing the whole charitable thing and like, you know, fighting against domestic violence. She was supposed to be at an event last week, and actually she didn't turn up yesterday to the event at the Cenotaph because apparently she was ill. She's unwell. So Charles, as I say, is opening 2 new food distribution hubs for his 76th birthday. But bear in mind who Charles is, right? He is a greedy, despicable person, him and his children, him and his family. They are despicable people. And we now know that they are charging the RNLI, Royal National Lifeboat Institution, for use of land, I believe, in Cornwall. We now know that the royal family are charging NHS for parking spaces. We know that they are renting out properties that are not habitable. And so they're doing this whole new PR drive. The hub is apparently a surplus food festival with meals created from food which would otherwise have gone to waste. Yummy, yummy, yummy. I hate it. And this is all part of Charles's coronation food project, which has given a fantastic £750,000 in community food grants. That is nothing to these greedy thieves. They're horrible people. They're horrible, greedy people. So an impact report detailing the work of the Coronation Food Project will be released on Thursday. Here's the thing. I truly believe you cannot have a just and fair society while royalty in any country exists. You have to abolish the monarchy. You simply have to, in order to be able to restore any balance at all to this world, because while they exist, it creates a many-tiered society with them apparently above us. Now, I have never felt that anybody is above me, and certainly not royalty, because they lack all the kind of decency that I know I have. So they could never be above me, ever. And I mean, frankly, Charles is, as I've already said on social media, the sort of repugnant result of what happens when you plunder the natural wealth and resources that belong to us, the people. And these are horrible, unconscionable people. And they think launching a couple of food hubs with recycled food is going to change the game for them. It won't. I think most people surely have now woken up to how disgusting these people are. There's only one thing I can say, and that is abolish the monarchy. Abolish them. And viewer Trev sent me an interesting comment, right? Said, look at this. I thought us pensioners weren't getting our heating allowance, and yet I've just got £150 off my octopus bill and a letter telling me I'm getting £200. Strange. Very strange. What's that all about then? Anybody know? Anybody else who was under the impression that they weren't getting the winter fuel allowance is now getting it? Anybody tell me that? Right. What else? It is 11:01. What else? Don't want to miss anything. Hate to miss anything. I hate to go off here and go, oh, I really wanted to talk about that and I didn't. So I'm just doing a little scooch through it all just to double check. Oh, by the way, look at this. Got to look at this, right? Can you see this? This is Buckinghamshire Council. Let me read you this. Liz on Twitter was applying for a school place for her 3-year-old, right? And notice that one of the requirements is to put down what the 3-year-old's gender identity is and a description of the 3-year-old's gender identity. Anyway, this thankfully fell into the hands of the local political representative, Mark Anthony Tett, who quite rightly says this is quite inappropriate. I have escalated this issue and instructed that it is removed. The form has been amended whilst we await the third-party supplier to update their software. Thank you for bringing this to the council's attention. And we have to keep doing this, right? Because otherwise, all these 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds are going to be lumbered with a gender identity because the council has been captured. Shame on you, Buckinghamshire Council, that you needed people to rail up against you to pull this offline. Absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous people. I filmed this, by the way, at the weekend. This is in King's Cross. Look at the size of this poppy. Look at the size of it. It's kind of big, huh? Sorry, that's me wobbling, walking towards it. Massive poppy. Massive poppy. Which still means a lot to many, many people. It does. And I don't take anything away from that. I just get deeply concerned about the glorification of war. Yes, I do. And just have a little look at them. There you go. There you go. They're going to be giving recycled food to the plebs. Very kind of them. I mean, I am just overwhelmed with their kindness. And as I say, it is for his birthday, just to return to that momentarily. And look what I spotted in my local park. Look at the size of that mushroom. I don't even know if that's edible. Does anybody know anything about mushrooms? But look at the size of it. Anyway, those are just things that I found interesting. Right, we are coming to very close to a close. Beautiful and glorious people. Just to say, yes. A Sonia Poulton Christmas. Really looking forward to that. The Granary, Saturday, 14th of December, 2024, 32 to 34 The Shore, Leith in Edinburgh. I will be back there doing a summation of this year, of all the events, a lot of events that have happened in my kind of investigative world, whether that is, you know, Diddy or Madeleine McCann or you name it, or paedophiles in Parliament or whatever. Loads of things have happened this year. Yes, they have. And I don't have the details in front of me of the next show I'm going to be doing. But I will make sure that I have that on, what day are we on? Monday. I get confused between Mondays and Fridays, but I'll make sure I have that on Friday. I promise. Right. Before I end, let me come back to your comments. What's this? Bring pitchforks to donate to the farmers. Of course, they've done. What's this? I've missed something. Oh, thank you, Patricia. Appreciate that. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Your shows have honestly become essential in my life. Thank you for your voice. I'm proud and out there. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that. Really, I do. Healing the silence. You talking about the absolute audacity of old sausage fingers thinking that he can make us all look good on him and his inbred family by giving us some recycled food. They're trolling us, says Jackie. They are. Yes, absolutely. Foie gras. One of the most repugnant foods on side and have been for years. With them all the way. What's that about, Valerie? What are we talking about? What's going on? Sausage. What's going on? Why were all the MSM running articles calling her queen every day? Well, because they are absolute arsewipes. That is why. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. Okay? I think that's the easy way to describe it. And yes, Teresa, I tend to think you're absolutely right. It's like throwing the dog a few scraps, although my dog does not have scraps. My dog eats better than me half the time. Right. I want to end with this idea, and that is don't allow people to box you in. And I say that because I had a conversation with a friend, and it's a couple of weeks ago now, but it kept coming back to me. And what she'd said was that she realizes there have been times in her life where she hasn't done what she wanted because she has been so influenced by what other people believe she should be doing. And that includes her loved ones, that includes her own children, that includes her partner. Now, for the most part, I am somebody who has a very independent streak, a very independent spirit, but that doesn't mean that I haven't been impacted by other people's short-sightedness. So the thing about being boxed in, right, it's often about, as I say, other people's short-sightedness, their own fears, and what the impact is to take you away from the life that is yours, that is intended for you, right? And when people try to put limitations on who you are, it really says more about them than it does about you. And they do it for a number of reasons. One is to control you. So it's not always coming from a good altruistic place. Like when you show somebody something that you're working on, they go, oh, I really think it might be a good idea if you do this instead of this. That is not always to constructive criticism. Sometimes that is to control you, right? Or if you decide that you want to, you know, go somewhere, go and visit somebody and people are like, oh, don't go and do that. You don't want to do that. Again, it could be about control. Another reason that people try to box you in is they don't have the ability to do what you are doing, whether that is campaigning or activism or creating. And people project their insecurity and fears onto those who are out there doing something. What's that expression, right? And that is, I'm going to paraphrase it badly, but basically, you know what I'm thinking of? Somebody in the comments is going to come to me with this, but it's the whole idea of don't tell me I can't do it while I'm busy doing it or something. Get out of the way while I'm busy doing it. I have just made an absolute pig's ear of that. But anyway, a further reason that people may try and box you in is They may fear that you may leave them behind, or you may expose them in some way. So it's in their interest to make you feel as if you lack power, because that is really what boxing someone in is. It's making them feel that they're powerless, right? And sometimes people think that if they box you in enough, you will never rise. But, you know, to again, badly paraphrase a really good quote, and that is they thought that burying you would work. They just didn't realize you were a seed, right? And the other one that comes to mind is this whole idea of take the bricks that are thrown at you and build your house. I've learned so much about people who have tried to constrain and restrain me, right? And also about how adversity can shape us. We need to make our own mistakes. Also, some people, they do it, don't they, under the guise of caring. Oh, I don't think you should do that because I care about you. You care about yourself. You take care of your corner. Let me have a glug of water. You take care of your corner. Stop worrying about my corner. I'm taking care of my own corner, right? And the thing is, I've also seen how when you make your own mistakes, and they are really vital. Honestly, it's so vital. I'm sure there's many people here who can testify to the truth of the statement that adversity shapes you, right? Shapes you. It can motivate you. It can drive you. It can drive you on to fulfilling your ambitions and to succeed in. And I often see how people start, when they start to get a little bit of public attention, like on social media and things, they get trolled and stalked. That often happens, especially if they're standing up very proudly and loudly. And then what often happens, I would say probably as much as like 8 or 9 times out of 10, is the people who get trolled and stalked, they become so horrified by it, right, that they become fearful about posting, or they become obsessed with those who are attacking them. And I see it over and over again. Now, I am a pro in this arena. I have been stalked and I've been trolled repeatedly for many, many, many years. And I can tell you, one of the best things to do about those people is to deny them oxygen, because they need oxygen. There's a lot of narcissists involved in that, and they need the fuel. Yeah, they do. They need that fuel. So deny them it, because giving them attention, even attacking back, will not help you. You need to show these people who are trying to put the brakes on your life that they can't. And one of the ways that you will show them is by continuing on, right? The thing is, these people who want to box you in, they don't want you to have a positive impact on the world. They are crabs in a bucket. Do you know that crabs in a bucket mentality? They don't want people to escape from the bucket. So the crabs, this is what crabs do. Have you ever seen crabs in a bucket? When a crab starts to find its way out of the bucket, the other crabs pull it back down again. That's often the mentality of people who are advising you for your own good. And you know, the thing is, I've also seen something quite similar in terms of like boxing in our hope, our inspiration, our aspiration, like this week with the whole Trump and Kennedy thing, right? Or last week, rather. People are so eager to say, I told you so, that these people are wrong uns. And I've literally seen people this weekend who claim to be freedom fighters leap on the idea that Kennedy is not going to do what he says, and he may not. But given that they're now in power, I'm really hoping for the best that he will. And some of these people, they're so desperate to be crabs in a bucket, right? They've leapt on a bit of gossip published in the Telegraph and as part of a whispering campaign. Could have come from anywhere, even Harris's side. And yet people supposedly on the side of truth and freedom are sharing it with glee. It's almost as if they are willing Kennedy to fail, right? These people value being proven right rather than Kennedy actually doing the job. I hope he will. And you know, the thing is, I don't say that with blind faith. I mean, seeing as Trump is now in power, how about wait and see whether Kennedy will take on Big Pharma and Big Food? Because as I say, he's making all the right noises so far. But the crabs in the bucket mentality is, I told you these people were bad uns, and they will leap on anything, even using quotes from the hated legacy media in order to prove their point. It's boxing people in. And honestly, just to say as an aside, my take on Trump or Kennedy is if they even do a decent quarter, well, especially Kennedy, if he even does a decent quarter at tackling pharma and big food, right, it will still be better than the alternative. So that's a good example of people wanting to box something in, because sometimes I think the people who want to box ideas and people in, they themselves are so fearful that they want the status quo to be maintained. And they want to be able to say, I told you so, right? When you dare to break away from that. Any examples in the comments of people trying to box you in? Talk to me, beautiful people. 11:13. Is it 4 a.m. where you are, Stephanie? Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Johnny Fettler. Crazy Bunny. Johnny Fettler is a major fan of yours, mate. I met Johnny on Friday and he was insistent that I tell you that your reading for him was the best he's ever had. Absolutely spot on. You knew so much about him, even though you didn't know him. Amazing stuff. So there you go. She's brilliant, is our Crazy Bunny. Very, very skilled and talented. Rachel, your mother-in-law trying to box you in, yeah? Yeah? What else we got going on here? What else we got on here? Elaine, do you want an email address? Sonia Poulton at sky.com. Simon is asking about Liam Payne. There's really not much to say, Simon, about Liam Payne, other than 3 people have been charged. So it's a live case at this moment in time. I'm not following the conspiracy theory that it's anything to do with the music industry at this stage. I think it's so easy to leap on these stories and go, oh, there's no. I actually think what's probably happened is that Liam Payne is somebody who peaked very young in his career. He was dropped by his record label the week before his death. And I think that he's somebody who had various addictions. We already know that anyway, because he'd been in rehab. And I think that when his girlfriend went off back to the States ahead of him and he was waiting for papers to clear because he'd had to have tests to confirm that he was clean, I think what happened was he found himself with time on his hands, lots of money, and allegedly people at the hotel who could supply him with narcotics. And there is part of the charge is abandonment. So it is possible that there was somebody there with him. And that's what happened. And I think that it is, the thing is, this actually reminds me about a conversation we had at breakfast on Saturday, because I think we have to be really, really careful with just like people who are so determined to just spout beliefs on the internet without any firm backing, because it just muddies the waters a lot of time. And one of those things is about this constant idea that most leading ladies are men. Absolute tripe. I do think there are some leading ladies who are men, but the idea that the vast majority of like pop stars and Taylor Swift and Madonna and all men, absolute tripe. And I think actually what it does is a disservice to genuine conspiracies that are happening. And I actually think the same with the Liam Payne situation. I have seen nothing to suggest that this is anything at all to do with the music industry. Nothing at all. And I'd be one of the first people to leap up and down and say it was, if I believe that. No, I think that this, unfortunately, was probably a tragic accident that happened with somebody who was low, depressed, and had addictions. I think because we have to allow for the fact that that does happen. People have addictions and awful things happen as a consequence of that. So that's my take on it. Just responded to your Liam Payne comment. Right, people, I'm going to leave. It's 11:17. And what else? You don't know something? Just admit you don't know. Yes, be a liar, not a sheep. Be a victor, not a victim. Be a leader, not a follower. I love that. I absolutely love that. And I'm going to end on a quote. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody that I met over the weekend. Thank you to my lovely friend, Sue. You are an absolute darling. I love you to bits. Thank you so much, Frank and Julie, and everybody who is here today. Crazy Bunny also thinks it was a tragic accident. And lovely Priscilla. He was depressed because of the music industry. Well, now that is possible. Absolutely. Now that may be the link, but I don't necessarily think it was somebody from the music industry who was sent to finish him off. Thank you, Deirdre. Deirdre loves the show and we love that. And I love you all. And thank you very much for being here with me. Keep your emails coming in and your geoengineering pictures and everything. I really appreciate you. And I'm going to end on a box quote, right? And that is, I'm allergic to boxes. I break out of them all the time. Have a beautiful, beautiful Monday. Have a beautiful, beautiful week. Take good care of yourself. I'll see you Friday. Oh, and by the way, thank you also. I'm not going to end this yet. Thank you also to my 2 wonderful mods. And thank you to the brilliant chatters here today. Love you loads. See you Friday, everybody. Take care.